Welcome back to another episode of Season 2 of Inside Assemble AI. I'm Sam, here with my co host Mac. Over the past couple of decades, we have explored how organizations can harness AI for growth and healthcare innovation. But today, we're addressing the elephant in the room, jobs. We're seeing headlines about tech layoffs with AI cited as a reason, while simultaneously hearing about entirely new roles like prompt engineers and AI evangelists that coming up. So what's really happening? Is AI making tech workers obsolete or creating unprecedented opportunities? And critically, are these layoffs truly AI driven, or is AI just a convenient excuse for broader restructuring?
Today's episode is AI and the future of tech jobs, disruption, opportunity, path forward. And we are tackling which roles are most vulnerable, what new skills matter, how generational differences play out, and what leaders can learn from companies that regret hurting jobs too quickly. We are joined by Tegan Bartos, workforce strategist, labor economist, industry analyst, executive resume writing, and personal branding for leaders, teaching outdated tactics to land roles, specializing in how AI reshapes tech sector employment. Tegan Bartos, thank you so much for joining with us today.
Yeah, Sam, Mac, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about this topic, but I do want to fully disclose that my tech genius starts and stops at unplug it and plug it back in.
Perfect. Okay, so let's get started.
All right. So first Q&A section, opportunities and productivity. So Tegan, let's start with the opportunity side of the story because it's easy to get consumed by anxiety. So what are the most exciting opportunities AI is creating in the tech job market today? And where are you seeing genuine new demand?
Love this question because the media loves to fearmonger. And when something new happens, we typically are fearful of it instead of embrace it. But I think anybody who is in the tech field is particularly drawn to it because of the constant change and the opportunities that this industry brings for professional growth and development. I mean, a new iPhone comes out every single year with new features, and AI is no different. It is the next tool to support what we do. And the more we fear it or push against it, the harder we are going to have to adopt to this new phase. It's kind of like the .com burst when people said, "Oh, I'm never going to send an email." So what? Are you just going to keep sending letters? Same thing. AI is here. It's not going away and we're going to leverage it. And so what does that mean for our jobs? Well, for technical professionals, it's really exciting because we all get to be on the forefront of driving its capabilities and how our organizations leverage it. And it does impact some of the day-to-day tasks and the hierarchy structure with a lot of organizations, right? We're seeing a significant shifts in middle management disappearing and some of those entry level roles being acquired by AI. But we are also seeing massive opportunities for individuals in tech that's just reimagined. So it's not too scary after all.
Yep, that's definitely encouraging. And like you mentioned, that I know change is always constant. So we just definitely need to embrace it and adapt it to this AI cycle. Very encouraging perspective. Thanks, Tegan. Now, there's a fundamental question about whether AI makes tech workers more productive and creative rather than replacing them. What does the evidence actually show? Are we seeing augmentation or displacement, especially in the technology world? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think we're seeing a little bit of both. Certain roles are becoming obsolete because AI can just do it better and quicker than us. However, there's still a human element required to make AI work well. And we still need human oversight for quite a few things across the gamut of IT roles. So, a couple of things that come to mind: call centers, they're probably going to become obsolete. So, what does that mean for help desk? Well, potentially a lot of those tier one tickets might be able to be fixed instantly from a chat box. They might be able to remote access whatever's going on and instantly solve the problem. And then we might only need tier 2 or tier 3 help desk support at that point. We're seeing AI doing a lot of coding where, gosh, I feel like 6 years ago, all the kids were sold this story that learn to code, you will get a six-figure job. And now 6% of graduates aren't finding industry related employment and are unemployed, which is mind-boggling because technical skills are in high demand, yet employers are saying they can't find talent with the right skill set. And so I think it's less about an either or and more so about a positioning problem. Organizations are struggling to effectively communicate what their needs are today, and they're really struggling. I'm under NDA with all of my clients, but what I can tell you is a consistent theme with my corporate clients when it comes to job architectures is they know that they are going to need a job for a couple of months. And then once this new technology rollout occurs, then that job's not going to be there anymore, but they want to hire somebody that could take on what that next role would look like. But what does that look like before they even understand the capabilities of the technology that they're integrating? And so we're seeing a little bit of a dichotomy of non-technical stakeholders struggling to figure out what the tech role, what is needed in this role. And then we're also seeing a challenge from job seekers and being able to truly articulate the value that they bring to an organization. And when I say the value they bring to the organization, it's not about their ability to code. What does that code do for the business? What is the ultimate value? Does it increase UX, which makes purchasing decisions easier to drive revenue? Does it automate something that ultimately saves the company time? Most job seekers aren't talking like sophisticated business contributors. They're talking technical talk. And then so there's that disconnect, which complicates things so much further.
No, I totally agree with you because even though with this AI evolution, I guess the fundamental aspect of like the technology strategy should be the business strategy hasn't changed. But like you mentioned, like some of the cases that job seekers might be struggling to connect the dots is how can influence their business strategy. I think that's where, or maybe in that case where people they can make that code, they can stand out from the crowd, but they can connect the dots between technology or AI strategy with the business strategy will be able to kind of land jobs and maybe even move into a new roles. So totally agree with you on this aspect. Now, to move on to the next section, I'm going to pass it over to Mac to talk a little bit about emerging roles and evolving skills.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Again, I completely resonate with that you mentioned about, that it's someone who can do excellent coding, but it's not about how good he or she is in coding, but what the value he is bringing to the company. And I remember that, when I first applied for the coding probably 10, 12 years back, at that time, I used to get calls, interview calls almost like, 4 or 5 a day. And, but after 7, 8 years, that when I started actually, looking more for the leadership roles, and, things got completely changed. And then, like AI just started, and at that time, like things got changed, lot of expectation. And even though I took a lot of developers for my team, and I clearly see that the same thing, that as you mentioned, that I don't even ask that how good you are in the coding, but if I bring you to my team, what the value that you are actually giving it to my business, right?
Okay. So for anybody on your job search, listen, because that's a great interview question to be prepared for.
Definitely. Yep. I guess our listeners are taking note of it if they're on the job market or looking for jobs in this quite evolving, AI landscape.
Absolutely. Okay. So let's talk about emerging roles and evolving skills. So let's dig into the new job categories emerging with AI adoption. So we are hearing terms like AI evangelist, model trainers, prompt engineers. Are these real at all? Sustainable careers, or are they transitional roles that will themselves be automated? What's your assessment on this?
So I feel like a little bit of an outsider looking in with this topic because I don't understand the technology enough behind the scenes to know if the role is here to stay or if it's going to be short lived. But when I'm working with clients on building out job architectures, a few things remain consistent with the organizations predicting that it is going to be a long-term need. A lot of them deal with governance. And so any role that is supporting the quality and the security of the data going into the large language models to create the AI on the output, those are roles that they see need going to be staying because legislation and compliance is constantly changing across industries. Some of the roles that I think might be temporary are some of the initial high volume trainers. So I've worked with so many clients who have had an area of expertise outside of technology, and they've been brought in as short-term consultants to help test the accuracy of the language output. So say you're creating a chat box to give initial answers to see if you qualify for an automotive loan, for example. The chat box is working and it's been tested and tons of questions have been asked and verified, then that role essentially goes away. And only when an error has been triggered will a human being intervene, but it's not something that they need around the clock. So I think the roles that are helping organizations foundationally build their programs are going to be more in demand now, and we're going to need less quantity of those roles moving forward. Now, for the roles that play a more strategic role when it comes to updates, governance, data quality, etc., automation, keeping up with the changing business needs are going to be the roles that are going to continue to stay. So I think that all of our roles, even non-technical roles, are going to be impacted by AI. And pretty soon the expectation is just that we're all going to use it in some type of capacity and it will impact our roles. How? That is still to come, but it's nothing to fear. Anything, it's something to embrace and gain inspiration from and make our lives easier. In a dream world, right? That's what technology is for. We use technology to make our lives easier. That's what cell phones are for, the convenience of it. That's what self-driving cars are for. And so that's a long-winded answer, but that's the best I got for you.
Yeah, absolutely. There are
Mhm.
so many ways to explain it, and I clearly actually see the value. Actually, what you just said, and thi- things are moving so fast, and I feel like that whenever we are talking about that, which are the skills that they are going to stay, it's very hard to predict because I think most of the strategists, right? I mean, those kind of role, responsible AI, I mean, is one of the topics. Risk, governance, these are going to stay probably, but those like the coder, the tester, customer service is already gone, by the way. I think majority of companies, 90% companies, they are now fully automated from the customer service. And, other the entry level jobs, I think it's mostly, they are almost gone, or even though they're still dependent on that, it will go out eventually. So, but I think, I mean, as you actually mentioned that, more of that leadership roles or more of a strategic roles, I think these are going to stay. I fully resonate with that. Now, coming to my next questions, actually, that so what you just said. So how is AI reshaping the skills tech professionals need to remain competitive? So if you are a software engineer, for example, or data analyst or tester or product manager today, what should you be learning to future proof your career?
Yeah, I think one of the challenging things on this is companies aren't investing as much in upskilling as they have in the past. And this puts the onus on us to learn the skills that we're not gaining access to in the workplace. And that feel really frustrating for a lot of people because why lay me off when I'm fully capable of learning this new skill that we're all learning to to replace me with somebody else who's already learned it. But that's the reality of where we're at. And so I think a lot of the skills that, say, a software engineer or a quality assurance tester, what have you, the variety, they're having to learn more about prompt engineering, because without quality prompts, you're not going to get quality inputs. More skills about how to create workflows. And someone who is familiar with engineering AI, I'm probably butchering how to say this, but for me, for example, I create different chat boxes. Like, I teach the different chat boxes, different aspects of my business, and then I tie them together to create a agent. And then that agent then can support my clients. So if a client is submitting, and I mean, I have trained this thing on every question I've ever been asked from a client. It has access to all my workbooks, my online course, all of my social media posts, and I have extensively tested it for the quality of the output and refined it to sound more like me. So that way I've essentially cloned my knowledge base. Individuals who don't know how to do, and remember, I said I can plug a computer in and or plug it back in to try to get it to work. That's the extent of my technical knowledge. But if I can create agents through training different chat boxes, if it's that easy for me to do it, then certainly someone with more advanced technological skills should be able to learn how to do that as well. And if you don't have access to doing that at your current employer, what I've been seeing a lot of job seekers need to do is create a portfolio of project work. Well, how do you do that? You could go to a boot camp. Sure, you could learn skills, right? I worked for many of them. But you can also do this at home or through volunteer work. I have so many clients who have volunteered with different nonprofits to help them set up different AI enabled tools. And then they were able to use that consulting experience, even though it was unpaid, on their resume to show a portfolio of work that they were able to complete this. And then they're that much more likely to get hired. So other skills that people are going to need to learn that maybe they didn't have to in the past, that it was primarily upper management that had to understand it, is truly having a strong business acumen. Mac, you said a lot of the early career tech roles, the entry level tech roles, are being absorbed through AI. So what does that mean for our youth? That is a really scary reality for them. So what does that mean for them? It means that they need advanced business skills to understand and anticipate what the business needs today and tomorrow, to be able to better consult or architect solutions, whether they're AI or cloud-based or whatever, for their organization. Otherwise, it's going to be really hard for them to be competitive.
Absolutely. Completely resonant with that. And it's a great suggestion actually and to all our listeners. Like, it's point to be noted actually that if someone doesn't have the experience, how to utilize the AI skills or, like where to implement the AI, it's best to, join a boot camp, because a lot of time what happens is, even I can see actually, the organization that I am also working on, that the problem is that upper management doesn't approve all the time, like, because there are a lot of issues actually, like for the risk, as I mentioned earlier, that they don't allow to access the data. And if you can't, then, you're not, like, apply the AI properly. So bootcamp is one of the options, as you mentioned, Tegan, and, like a lot of volunteer for the nonprofit. Definitely, like, I am also going to take a note for the nonprofit options as well. So great suggestions for our next segment of vulnerability and augmentation. So I'm going to pass it over to Sam.
Thanks, Mac. Love the way this discussion is kind of shaping up. And I totally agree with you both on the front that AI literacy is must. It's just something like, Tegan, you mentioned that, you built a few AI agent that's kind of like improving your operational efficiency in your organization. Like, even without any technology background or experience, you're able to put together something. So I feel like we are living in a society where I guess the ideas going to take an upper hand. Like, as long as you have the ideas, you can go and figure things out since AI is there for you. But you definitely need to have that understanding of how you can come up with different technology or strategy that can tie back to the business. And I think that is what I guess some of the listeners over there, maybe they're just newbies, fresh out of school, should take a note that at the end of the day, like Tegan mentioned, that you need to improve your business strategy, you need to have that business acumen, and also join some boot camps like Mac mentioned, and try to improve your AI literacy. So having said that, I'm going to move on to the next question. So this question is something we already touched upon, but I still love to hear a little bit more about that from Tegan especially. So Tegan, you work with a lot of consultants, you have a lot of clients from different industry domains and stuff. So if I would ask you that, how do you actually encourage professionals in different roles to think about their future, especially in this evolving AI landscape? How do you approach that?
Yeah. So when it comes to working with job seekers, I always like to remind them that they are the CEO of their career. No one, with the exception of maybe your mother or father, cares about your career more than you do. Your manager is not responsible for your success, for your growth, your development. You are. Now, when you can get a manager who mentors you and even sponsors you throughout your career, that is amazing. But the onus is on us to forge those relationships, to have those conversations. And so I think that is the mindset shift that we need to have. I will say this and try to word it sensitively, but many individuals in tech have had an entitled mindset because their roles have been so necessary to the organization's success. And now an AI agent can come in and do that job. And so many of us are feeling redundant or unnecessary or unvalued. Where before organizations would say, "Oh my gosh, go learn this new technology. It's the latest and greatest thing. I'm going to pay for your training and your certification, the cost to get your certified." And now that's on us, really, in a lot of organizations to do. I don't necessarily agree with that business philosophy, but I think that that is the overarching reality of where we're at. And Sam and Mac, maybe you have a different perspective, but that's what I'm seeing across the board, across industries, hospitality, finance, supply chain and logistics, technology, healthcare. I'm just not seeing it.
You know what? I would definitely say that I agree with you. I do not have a different opinion here because I feel like we are going back to that fundamental job search where we have to value relationship more than what skill set we possess, because AI can do a lot of stuff. So we have to think about not only relationship, what value we're adding to the business, and that's gonna probably help a job seeker stand up from the crowd. So totally agree with you, Tegan, on that. And especially in the tech world, I think it's more prevailing because at the end of the day, AI can do a lot of things. AI can learn something faster than we do, right? So we need to think about how we can actually make AI to do our job. And that's where, we can probably keep our job layoff proof or whatever, you can call it. So thanks, Tegan. I think that's a great perspective. Moving on to my next question, and this is something I would say maybe a little harder question because I just mentioned the word layoff. So we're going to pivot to that particular topic. Do you really think these layoffs are truly driven by AI adoption, or is AI is just being used as a convenient excuses for broader restructuring, or whether it's cost cutting, correction over hiring, reorganization? And again, we just wanted to get your personal opinion. We are not representing an organization or anything here, but just to get your opinion that how this AI adoption and this layoff things are, whether they're related, or is it just like, organizations are making it as an excuse to reduce their workforces?
I think that the tech landscape is complicated. In 2021, there was a tech hiring boom where organizations had access to cheap money to be able to invest in piloting projects that maybe then became really expensive for them to complete as the economy shifted and layoffs had to occur. I think that organizations, even the big boys like the Fortune 50, Fortune 500 companies, aren't as fiscally responsible with their budgets as they could or should be. I've personally seen a lot of bloat at organizations. I don't think one person should be doing 4 people's jobs. But I have seen a lot of jobs be redundant or unnecessary. And is this an explicit show? I think that there's a lot of BS stuff that companies have us do in our day-to-day roles, right? It's just, what is the point? Why do we need to do this? And when companies really take a step back and streamline operations and really optimize for efficiencies, a lot of that bloat, unnecessary bloat, gets cut. And ultimately, people lose their jobs. I think that is shifting the way that companies are making decisions. But more so, I think our economy and the federal disruption that has occurred in 2025, like, not getting political, it's a fact. We are experiencing federal disruption on unprecedented scales when it comes to the decision to shrink our federal government. And presently, I'm not sure when this is going to be released, but our government is frozen right now. It is shut down. Our government is shut down because of there's not a budget, right? So I think that that is significantly impacting corporate more than AI. I recently attended Indeed's Future Work Conference, and they have all of their data, right? Not just for jobs that are posted in the United States, but offshore as well. Interesting facts. Like in France, the average time to hire is 2 weeks. I mean, that's amazing. But more so interesting for this conversation is they have seen a 3% increase in AI mentions within job descriptions. And if you're watching the media, you would not think that's the case because headlines say something so different. But in reality, one of the biggest job boards in the United States has seen a 3% increase in the requirement to have AI experience. If you don't mind, one of the things that was really interesting about that conference when it came to technology, what is attached to us at all times? Our phones, right? Everything that we do is attached to our phone. What if in the future, instead of communicating through our phone, we communicated through a chip in our brain that automatically sent messages, took notes, created designs? That is a reality that seems like Star Wars to us. But yet here we are with cell phones and computers and, sliding doors. And that all used to be fantasy, but is now a reality. So what does our reality look down the road? Very, very different from how we're leveraging technology and AI right now.
I guess very informative. Thanks for giving your honest feedback and response over here. And people who are listening, I'm pretty sure they agree with some of the internal and external factors that you mentioned that sometimes become the salient reasons why companies or organizations do the cost cutting, do the reduction of workforce. AI kind of probably just using as a catalyst to that reducing workforce strategy. But totally agree with you in some of the other factors that you mentioned here. So
I will
now,
say a lot of my clients are pausing new hires until an existing role can be redefined with AI. So earlier, I explained that I support organizations with recreating job architectures. Anybody who's not in talent acquisition is probably like, what the heck is a job architecture? And so a job architecture outlines the different levels, right? We have more entry to more senior in that bandwidth of skills. We've got all the skills necessary to be able to do this job well. And then we have the KPIs that determines the effectiveness of the person performing these tasks. What is the ultimate business case for this job architecture? And how can we measure it so we can be as effective as possible as an organization?
yeah.
And so what I'm seeing a lot is companies, yes, they're doing mass layoffs for help desks and things like that, or coding that's, being automated now through AI. But a lot of what I'm seeing is jobs are being put on pause until the job architecture is updated with how this role is going to leverage AI and the new technology stacks that the organization is using. And there's an impasse there, which means there's a less job openings. Statistically, this is factual. There is currently less job openings than there are job seekers. And I think that that element is a big piece of this puzzle on top of all the economic conditions.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, we have seen some slowdown in the job market, and like you mentioned, like there are job architects out there from science organization. They're still trying to figure out how they can adapt AI in a new role. And we didn't even know that role would exist in a few months from now. So we are literally going through a transition phase, and we definitely need some time to settle down there. And some other factors that also kind of like influencing that, slow down decision from everywhere. So yeah, thanks for your honest feedback and perspective, Tegan. And for the next section, I'm going to pass it over to Mac. And definitely enjoying the conversation. I'm pretty sure our listeners are doing so. Over to you, Mac.
Sam. And I really love the conversation, where it is going. And I came to know a lot of information, and these are very useful information. Tegan, thanks for that. The 3%, especially like what you have mentioned, it means like, 97% jobs are still there. They don't even mention AI. And thing is that I don't completely blame AI, like, all the job cutting stuff, but I think I completely agree with you because AI is one of the decision factors for all the big companies and I think all the medium sized companies. I think they think in a different way that in why AI is so advanced and why we are going to spend, billions of dollars, just to, staffing hundreds of thousands of employees. And that's one of the things. But still, having said that, Fortune 100 and Fortune 500 companies, there are still a lot of roles that I didn't even see AI is mentioned at all. So I think we are still, we need to still wait for several years, like, where AI is going to replace the whole thing. Or, we need to wait that if it's really a bubble or not. But it is 100% sure that entry level things that they will be going away sooner or later. But I really love the conversation. Now, coming to the next segment, generational dynamics and lessons learned. There is an interesting generational dimension to this. How are generational differences showing up in AI's impact on tech employment? Are younger or entry level workers at greater risk compared to the senior professionals? Or is it more nuanced than that?
Okay. I wish I would have pulled some data up prior to this because there's a couple of different institutions that track generational adoption of AI, and it's significant, statistically significant that younger generations are adopting it. They're just trusting it more, where older generations are a little bit more hesitant to it. And I think there's a couple of things at play. The more senior we get in careers, the more wisdom that we have to guide us, and great leaders, in addition to looking at data to make decisions, we also trust our intuition. And so say in the talent space, I've got candidate A and I got candidate B, and they're almost equal, but candidate A has something in their background that through the data has shown me that they're more likely not to be satisfied with the culture of our organization and leave within 6 months. Maybe that's they came from one organization, and anytime we hire somebody from this particular company, they don't stay long because our values or our culture is just that significantly different. And so maybe I might be a little bit hesitant, to go with A. Where AI, they may not give us that same advice. And so, gosh, I'm rambling. What was the question again, Mac?
So,
Generational. Yeah. So I think it's a twofold. One, age discrimination is real. I used to run AARP's Back to Work 50 Plus grant, and we can definitively know that organizations, especially in tech, discriminate against those 40 plus, 50 plus. And the surveys that go out to generational AI adopters is also showing that individuals of the silent generation and boomers are less likely to adopt AI versus millennials and whatever the younger generation is right now. So there's definitely trends there. That I think will impact job security. I know for those that are concerned about age discrimination, which literally legally we start being protected at 40. And so, we're all thinking, gosh, age discrimination is applying to us really soon. And it's wild to think that there's these perceptions that we won't use it or don't know how to use it. More so, we know in our organization that maybe our data isn't the best at producing the best outcomes through these large language models at this time, or we know the potential implications of inputting something into AI that's confidential that could impact the stability of our organization, where someone who is earlier in their career might not be thinking with and governance top of mind.
Great. Perfect. And, and having said that, we are starting to see stories about companies saying that they regret cutting jobs too quickly in response to AI capabilities. So, what lessons can leaders learn from organizations that move too fast? What should they have done differently?
Okay, I'm going to be slightly biased when answering this question because I am a data nerd. And I don't think most organizations appreciate data integrity enough. And when it comes to AI, garbage in, garbage out. And so if we're not feeding AI with quality training, the large language models just aren't going to perform quality outputs because they don't have that human element in mind. And so a lot of these organizations thought that they could outsource all of these roles, but then gaps in their operations started coming through. And I see this all the time with people in sales roles where they enter things sloppily or where it should only be numerical values in a field, but now all of a sudden there's an elf there's a letter there instead of a number, and it messes up everything down the pipeline to create quality outputs. And so when organizations are saying, I did these layoffs and the technology isn't working, I regret spending this much money on this software that promised all these things but didn't implement. One of the lessons that other organizations can learn from is that when you're testing an AI enabled tool in a sandbox, sales engineers are great at saying, oh, yeah, let me show you what this does. And it's a fake button. You buy the software and that button doesn't even exist yet. Well, that's going to be on the next feature rollout. No, I want to see it, not in a sandbox. I want to see it really happening because you will sell me rainbows and sunshine and butterflies, but what I get isn't what I thought I was getting. And so I think that's a great lesson for leaders to learn. I also think it's really important for leaders to remember how important people are to their organization. Technology is great, but without people, we don't have companies. And there is a disconnect, especially in publicly traded companies that have a fiduciary responsibility. It's so easy to cut headcount for the sake of profits, but it impacts user experience, customer experience, employer brand, retention, which all adds up to dollars and cents. It impacts the bottom line. My blood is boiling right now thinking about this question, all the different lessons that leaders need to learn. This may be an unpopular opinion. I think that we need more women on boards because the majority of boards are filled with white men. And this is no offense to white men, but data has shown that when we have more diverse representation on boards or on leadership teams, companies are more successful. And when specifically speaking about publicly traded companies, the board is ultimately the driver of the strategic
Right.
vision of the organization. And then it's the CEO's job to make sure it gets done. And so if we had stronger boards, stronger representations, more technical acumen and diverse perspectives on the boards, especially publicly traded companies, wouldn't be making such costly mistakes when it comes to their most valuable asset, which is their people.
Great explanation. Really love the answers. The way you said, I'm pretty much sure that we definitely need to it's all of the company's responsibility to balance it out the board, right? The board of directors is so powerful thing. Thank you so much for that. Moving to the next segment, I'm going to pass it over to Sam for reskilling and policy responses.
Thanks, Mac. I'm Tegan. Love your candid feedback and totally agree with on that diversity and especially having the diverse perspective, especially at the upper level of an organization, is so necessary. I think that's probably a doctor order for any organization at this moment, especially in this era of how we are seeing this AI landscape quite evolving and it's impacting the job market. And I can't agree more on the fact that we still need human workforce. We still have to keep human in the loop. Doesn't matter how much AI would bring proficiency or efficiency in your process, we still need AI. I mean, we still need a human. And I also agree with you on the fact that, we've seen that the Gen Z are kind of like getting more smarter and they're more smarter in utilizing technology than us. But I do also feel like the older generation, whether it's millennial or, baby boomers, I think I guess I'm representing millennial here. It's my responsibility to make sure a Gen Z using AI more responsibly and ethically, but not doing something that's gonna probably exploit some data or some security, right? So that's why I would still need a millennial in my organization who is actually gonna guide that. So we would need human. Doesn't matter AI is there or not. So that's just my personal perspective based on what you shared. So love everything. Um, Now moving on to this next question. So we talked about a lot of like issues and how we can approach that. So now this section is more about talking about solutions. So in your opinion, how are forward-thinking companies approaching reskilling and internal redeployment to protect their workforce in the age of AI? And what models do you think they should adopt in terms of bringing, balancing out the AI innovation and also retaining the workforce?
Yeah. I have the privilege to work with some of the best minds in technology at my company. And so I don't even have to reinvent the wheel on this. I can share what some of my favorite leaders are doing, having hackathons across the organization that anybody can participate in is amazing because with how technology is shifting, we don't just need technical experts. We need subject matter experts across the organization to have the technology do what it needs to do for us. And what these hackathons allow the organization to do is find creative solutions to current and future problems, to be more innovative in a safe space, to step outside of our existing role. I'm in the talent space. Talent leaders have a lot to contribute towards how AI is being implemented across the org. Because guess what? People are the ones that got to use it. So you should absolutely have the talent person representing this to a certain extent, not just the coders or the engineers and so on. And so I love the hackathon approach to create a culture of innovation cross functionally. Any organization that I've seen leverage this model has then been able to successfully implement the recommendations that come out of it and upskill the entire organization as they go along. I've got one leader right now that I'm working with who created really fun ways to help every single person in their organization understand how their role impacts their AI capabilities. And then that helps people feel more invested in the value that they bring to their organization and helps reinforce best practices when it comes to leveraging it, which they've found to have a massive ROI in terms of implementing this out. I've also seen really fun internships. It's fall. Summer internships are being posted right now for 2026. And some of these organizations are letting these interns come in and be wild with their ideas, kind of being like tech incubators with the interns to see what they can create. And when we bring in fresh, new talent in college, it's amazing what ideas can come up with. And so I think that there are a lot of ways that organizations can very affordably innovate and upskill. And unfortunately, I think a lot of organizations are taking the cheap way out and not doing those steps to save on costs. And I think it's short-sighted.
Definitely, especially in this realm of AI world or whatever going on out, we definitely need to make sure our workforces learn and adapt to what they are doing can be done better using AI. Not just just replacing them in that workforce, but at least they could still try and see what they can do. And as a leader, I think it's probably our job to make sure that our workforces, our the resources are actually trying to use AI and see if it's going to help or not. And that's a long down the road. So totally agree with you, Tegan, on that fact. Now, I know we can talk about that for hours and hours, but for the sake of the time, we are kind of getting into the business end of the podcast. So I'm going to pass it over to Mac for any final question and just wrap up the session afterwards.
Thank
Yeah. So one of the questions that I have for the future scenarios and the new growth so looking ahead for 5 to 10 years down the road, what's the most realistic scenario? Like, are we headed for an AI-driven jobs crisis, or a relatively balanced transition, or a productivity boom that creates more opportunities than it destroys? Does the evidence point toward?
I think the evidence is very clear that human beings do not like change. They do not like disruption. And that is what AI is doing across functions. No role is going to be immune for the impact that AI is having in the workplace. And so thinking about 5 to 10 years down the road, I think that early adopters and individuals who are willing to work hard, not in a hustle way, not in a toxic workplace way, but willing to think through the unknown, are going to be successful. And we're not all wired that way. Most of us are naturally wired to fear change, to be cautious and wary of new, but reality isn't giving us that option. And so I think that the people that will be most successful are the people who are willing to unlearn what we know and embrace the unknown and learn what it is that we don't even know we need to learn very quickly. And that may sound hypothetical and out there to listeners. Many of the listeners may have never been exposed to those types of roles before, but there's plenty of example of roles that have to do this. Think of the transformational leaders in all of our organizations that are doing something brand new for the very first time. Think about when Microsoft first came on the scene, or, when Yahoo first came on the scene. Who thinks of Yahoo anymore? It's Google, and now it's GPT. And so when we foster cultures and mindsets of continuous growth and development, I think we're moving the needle from best in class. I think we're moving the needle from operational excellence and replacing it with growth and optimization, because perfection in a rapidly changing world in the next 5 to 10 years, I don't think we'll be there yet. I think it'll be about continuous growth that becomes the priority, and then that constant change and evolution and development of things, which may be super exciting to some people, and other people may say, clack me out, I'm going to retire early, I'm done. And some people may say, oh, I'm just going to live in my mom's basement and freeload off of her, because doesn't sound like my cup of tea. But if it is your cup of tea, you're Gucci, because that's what's coming for us. At least that's my prediction in the next 5 to 10 years.
Love that. And I completely agree with that, because I think that, we all are, I think, agree with that point that change is coming. I think change is already is there. It's more,
Change is constant. It's more prevailing now.
and I think those who are embracing those changes, they will be the real winner forward. And, I still see there are a lot of orthodox, and, they don't want any changes because they feel in that, because I am here for more than 15 years in the corporate life, and I feel like there are still people who are 50 plus, or even some are even 40 plus. They are kind of, very comfortable like what they're doing, and they don't like even, being changed, or, someone is telling them to be changed. So
I think that's across the board in age groups. I don't think it's necessarily a generational thing, because I work with people who are 40 plus every damn day. And if we think about who sits on boards, and the majority of CEO and board members are boomers, which is what, in their
50 to
56
60.
now.
Yeah, 60s. Yeah, they're like on
Yeah,
the minus 60s.
I think it's like 56 and on up right now. They're the ones driving these mandates. And so I don't think it's necessarily just boomers feeling like, I don't want this change. There's lots of people who don't want this change across generations because that's how we're biologically hardwired. But who are driving these changes? If anything, it's the boomers who are saying this change is coming and y'all need to figure it out. And that's what we've got to do.
Great. So it's time for wrap up. Thanks, Tegan. So this has been such an important conversation. The future of work is the questions underlying everything we do with AI, and your framework for thinking about augmentation versus replacement, reskilling strategies, and realistic scenarios helps cut through a lot of noise. So where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about your research?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is the best social media platform to find me on. And it's just LinkedIn /Tegan Bartos. I'm sure you guys can put it in the show notes. Otherwise, my website is u.joltyourcareer.today. Whoever owns, because I lapsed in my renewal of .com, and whoever owns that, sell it back to me, please. But right now, it's joltyourcareer.today because my bad, I did not keep up with that. But yes, anyone who's listening, feel free to connect with me. I will accept your connection request. I am almost at the 30,000 mark, but I constantly purge my connections. If any of you are on a job search and need help with resources, I have so many free resources on my website. And I'm not talking about throwaway resource. I'm talking about high quality strategic job search advice on my website that's available to you 24/7 with a click of a button. Happy to help, happy to support any way I can.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here. And to all our listeners, if this episode sparked questions or concerns, you are not alone. The transition we are in is real, complex, and consequential, but it's not predetermined. The choices leaders, workers, policymakers make right will shape whether AI creates widespread opportunity or widespread disruption. Subscribe wherever you are. Let us know what you want to explore what is next. From all of us at Inside Assembly AI, thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank
That
you.
was